cheating on my wife and future daughter-in-law together." The music started playing. All the guests stood looking toward the back of the church as the bride, hand in hand with her father, started down the aisle toward my son, who stood watching her walk toward him. 48 hours ago, I would have bet 10,000 to 1 that the wedding would never happen. I still didn't understand why it took place, but who can understand kids these days? Oh well, it's Rob's life, not mine. But I thought the night of his bachelor party would be a wake-up call for him. "Richard, I'm leaving," my wife called out to me as she walked up the stairs. I walked down the stairs and offered her my mouth for a goodbye kiss. She kissed me and said, "Don't wait for me, darling. If it goes as usual, I'll be too horny to drive and I'll crash at Melanie's." I suppose there's something in favor of having a bachelorette party at your sister's. Do you know what you're going to do yet? Rob and I have decided that we're definitely going to get drunk at the bachelor party and take a cab home when it's over. Well, honey, if it's a typical bachelor party and they invite a dancer, you better keep your hands to yourself, old man. I need everything you've got, so you don't want to go and give my stuff to some young fool who won't appreciate it as much as I do. She leaned forward, kissed me again, and then walked away. As I watched her walk away, I hoped that Rob would be lucky and Karen would be as good a wife to him as his mother had been to me. It was a typical bachelor party. 2 tables of poker players, puffing cigars and sipping liquor, and everyone with one ear listening to the knock on the door heralding the arrival of the entertainment. I felt completely out of place. Everyone was Rob's age, and I was the only old-timer. I knew this would be the case and tried to refuse to participate, but Rob insisted. Financially, it was a good move on my part because these young guys didn't know how to play poker and I was cleaning up after them. They were doing all sorts of stupid things, like holding a pair of 4s with an ace on the kicker and only drawing 2 cards or trying to draw an inside straight. One of them, in a 7-card stud, stayed in the game until the last card with nothing but an ace, a king in the hole against the 2 pairs visible on the table. It was like taking candy from a child. Then they started getting silly, adding wild cards. When Rob's best friend, upon getting dealt, called a 7-card stud with deuces, jacks, and axe-kings wild, I quit playing and went to my room, sat on the couch, and watched a tape someone had brought in. By 11, everyone was getting nervous because the dancer hadn't shown up, and Jim said, "Let's go to the Kit Kat Club," which was a topless establishment on the other side of town. I was in favor of going home myself, but I had promised to keep an eye on Rob and keep him out of trouble, so I went along with the others. I have no idea how we managed to get tables right in front of the restaurant entrance so late at night, but we did, and it probably wasn't good for Rob. Karen, the bride-to-be, was drop-dead gorgeous, but she was straddled when it came to breasts, and here he was in the front row where he could admire some of the biggest, firmest, and best breasts in the state. The poor guy had to sit there and drool into his beer. What's more, everyone at our party knew about it. Since it was Rob's bachelor party, the guys started buying him lap dances. Jim went so far as to tell one of the girls about Rob's status and the size of his chest, and the girls teased him mercilessly about the lap dances. By the time the first girl finished her lap dance, Rob was shaking. When she walked away, leaving Rob behind, I realized he was going to end the night with a violent bout of blues. The other guys cheered the girls on, and each lap dance became more and more intense. When it got late and the establishment started to clear out, it got even better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. There are laws in our town governing what girls can do, and there are people who enforce those laws. These people come into establishments like Kit Kats, pretend to be customers, and try to catch girls breaking those laws. As the Kit Kat emptied out, leaving only customers who the girls knew were not police officers, they became more and more lewd. Bare breasts rubbed against Rob's face, pressed against his chest as the girl sat on top of him. Everyone got into the excitement, and Rob and I found ourselves broken. Broken and broken, though we didn't realize how broken until after everyone had left. We stood in front of the Kit Kat and went through our pockets trying to find enough money to pay for a cab, but we were having no luck. Cabs in our town were notorious for not accepting checks, but I had a credit card, and 6 blocks down the street was the Shangri-La Motel. We walked, actually staggered, the 6 blocks and got a room for the night. It was the last room available, and we were lucky to get it, but maybe we weren't so lucky. The Shangri-La was an old motel built on the cheap before building codes existed, and the walls in it could have been like tissue paper. In the room south of us lived a man who snored louder than a saw for 20 minutes or so and then woke up. The snoring would be followed by an overpowering cough until he fell asleep again, and then the snoring would begin again. In the room that faced us to the east lived a drunken couple who had a good time fighting with each other, and we had to listen to them yell and scream and yell at each other. But it was the room on the north side of us that drove me crazy. As far as I could tell from the voices coming through the wall, there were 2 women and 5 men in there, and they were having something resembling sex. All the noise made it impossible to fall asleep, and we were forced to listen to the soundtrack from an adult movie we couldn't see. The voices were slightly distorted from behind the wall, but what was going on was clear enough. It went on like this for several hours while the men took turns having sex with the women. I could see the effect it was having on Rob. He still had blue balls after the Kit Kat Club, and what was happening next door to us made him squirm. Rob needed a release. I laughed and pointed at the wall. "Why don't you go and knock on their door? Tell them their noise is keeping you awake, and since you're awake anyway, why don't you join them?" I wanted to make a joke, but it was obvious he was seriously thinking about it. Not that I blamed him. I liked sex, and the house next door seemed to have plenty of it. I was also surprised by the contrast between the 2 women. One was described as elderly and married, and the other as young. Oh well, wishful thinking. In 23 years of marriage, I have never cheated on my wife. I never needed to. While other guys whined and moaned about only getting sex from their wives once or twice a week, Fran still pulled me into the bedroom 4 or 5 times a week. It was getting light, and I checked my watch and saw that it was almost 6. The Safeway store across from Kit Kat's was opening at 6. I could cash the check, we could catch a cab and go home. In the next room, I heard a woman say, "No more guys. You need to take me to my car, and I need to get home to my husband." "Are you going to give him sloppy seconds?" "Good God, no. Hopefully I'll get home just in time to kiss him goodbye before he leaves for work. I'll be all clean and sweet smelling for him when he gets home tonight." "Can we do this again?" "I don't see why not, but you can't call me, so give me a number where I can reach you." "Both of you?" "I can only speak for myself." "How'd you like that, the sex? Do you want to do it again?" The other woman. "I had fun." "Yes." "I think I'd like to do it again, but it might be a while before I can. I'm going to be very busy for the next 2 or 3 weeks." I looked at my watch and said, "Come on, Rob, let's get out of here." We stepped out into the rising sunlight just as the door to the next room opened, and 2 giggling women came out of there, followed by 5 guys. I heard a sharp, "Oh, God," and turned around to see Fran and Karen standing there. Rob saw Karen and his face went pale, and he threw up on the sidewalk. I have no idea what went on between Rob and Karen for 48 hours after that scene, but she was there, coming down the aisle toward him. I don't know where Fran was. I'm sure she was somewhere in the church, in the rows behind me, but I didn't care enough to look. I kicked her out of the house and then called the divorce attorney to schedule an appointment for the following Tuesday. I promised myself that I would be polite to her and smile when the photographer took the family portion of the wedding pictures. If, of course, they were going to be taken. I was still contemplating whether to stand up and say a few words when the priest went on to phrase that, "If anyone present knows the reason why this union should not take place, let him speak now or forever hold his opinion." I pondered. I pondered hard. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.